They always say the silence in the forest is peaceful. Whoever said that has never heard the wrong kind of silence. It was the second week of October, right when the fog rolls thick off the Pacific and settles in the canopies like it's got something to hide. I'd been patrolling the northern loop near Tall Trees Grove, a section not usually trafficked by tourists, which is exactly why I liked it. Miles of redwood so massive they made me feel like a child again. But that day, something felt off from the moment I stepped off the gravel access road. The birds weren't singing, no rustling, no crunch of squirrels darting through leaves. Even my boots sounded muted, like the ground was swallowing the noise. I'm Ranger Miles Wren. Been with the Park Service going on 15 years. I've seen weird meth lab busts in abandoned forest sheds. Campers trying to summon forest spirits with drums and psychedelics. Even that one guy who thought the redwoods were a portal to Atlantis. But nothing ever made the hairs on my neck stand up the way that silence did. About 3 miles in, I found it a perfect circle of mushrooms. And I don't mean a vaguely rounded patch. I'm talking precision, maybe 15 feet wide, ringed with puffballs and amanita, spaced just so, like someone had arranged them with a measuring tape, right at the base of an old growth redwood that had to be 1,000 years old. I stood at the edge for a moment, unsure why my legs wouldn't move forward. Then I saw it. In the very center of the ring, there was a rabbit. At least, it had been a rabbit. Its body was whole, unmangled, but the skull was cracked open, peeled back like a textbook dissection. No blood, no tissue, just clean, hollowed bone, as if something had scooped its brain out and left the rest untouched. No bite marks, no claw tears, no indication it had struggled. I crouched down but didn't enter the ring. I've never been superstitious, but something about that circle made my stomach tighten. I took out my phone, snapped a few photos, and radioed in. Basie, this is Wren. Logging anomaly in Sector D5. Possible animal mutilation. Sending coordinates now. I got static for a moment. Then Beckett's voice came through. He's our senior ranger. Copy that. Wren. Keep an eye out. It's one of those occult pranks again. We'd had reports a few months back, some kids trying to perform rituals for TikTok or whatever, leaving dead squirrels in pentagrams made of stones. Idiotic but harmless. Not sure, I answered. This one feels different. Different how? I stared at the rabbit. My skin itched. It's too clean, like it was done in a lab. No mess, no blood, just gone. There was a pause on the radio. Log it. Bag it if you can, and we'll review. Probably just another viral stunt. Beckett didn't sound convinced, but we both knew how this worked, unless there was a public safety risk. These things got logged, ignored, and eventually forgotten. Still, I didn't touch it. I didn't want to step inside the ring. I don't know why. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that rabbit, how impossibly perfect the incision was. The ring, the silence, like something had carved a space out of the world where nothing should live. Around 3, Zerwata, me, I got up and reviewed the photos I took, only they were gone. Every single shot I took afternoon that day black screen. Metadata said they were still there, still time stamped, but nothing rendered, just empty black. I tried rebooting the phone, swapped SD cards, nothing. I even plugged it into the laptop, still black. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a report by hand and mailed it to my personal address, just in case. 3 days later, I got a call from dispatch. A family camping up at Windmill Creek was reporting a missing child. 8-year-old boy, vanished overnight, zipped inside the tent, just like always. Parents woke up and he was gone. No sign of footprints, no noise, just gone. My stomach sank. His name was Colton Rayner. We launched a full search. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, deputies. I helped comb the nearby ravine. We found crushed brush, broken branches about 5 feet high, and mushrooms, same species. Same spacing, just no circle this time. Just scattered puffballs like breadcrumbs, but no Colton. Later that evening, I radioed Beckett privately. "You remember that rabbit?" I asked. "Yeah, what about it?" "Found mushrooms of the same type near the Rainer site. Random, but clustered. No blood, no signs of struggle." He went quiet. "I'm not saying it's the same thing," I added, "but something feels off." Beckett sighed. "Write it up. And Miles, be careful what you put in your report." That was the first time I realized he might be just as uneasy as I was. I returned to the original fairy ring a few days later. It was gone. Not disturbed, not grown over, gone, like it had never been there. The bark where the ring had formed looked smooth, too smooth, like new growth. No sign of the rabbit, no soil disturbance. Even the grass was undisturbed. I stood there for nearly an hour, heart pounding, waiting for something, anything to move. Nothing did, but that silence, it was still there. That thick, pressing, unnatural silence. And in the distance, past the tall trees and the fog, I thought I heard it again. That sound, that soft, rhythmic giggling, like children playing a game that no longer had rules. I'm not a paranoid man. 15 years in the service will teach you to separate noise from threat. 90% of weird calls turn out to be nothing coyotes howling, drunks thinking they saw Bigfoot, flashlights mistaken for glowing eyes. You learn to let go of the strange stuff unless it becomes dangerous. But the silence near the fairy ring, the rabbit, Colton's disappearance, it all stuck with me like burrs under the skin. For 3 days we searched Windmill Creek and every ridge around it, miles of redwood trails and offshoots, thick with underbrush, bramble, and ferns. I walked until my legs burned. I slept 2 hours at a time. Nothing. No footprints, no scent trail, no torn clothing. It was like Colton had been plucked straight out of reality. His parents, the Rainers, were wrecked. His mother, Dana, refused to leave camp. She sat outside their tent, wrapped in her son's dinosaur hoodie, eyes staring blankly into the woods. His father paced constantly, shaking, snapping at ranges, then breaking down sobbing when no one was looking. And yet, not once did I hear them mention a sound that woke them up. That bugged me. Even bears make noise, owls, raccoons, hell, even wind makes tents creak. But they said they slept through the night like nothing happened, then woke up and their kid was gone. The morning of day 4, something changed. I was finishing my patrol of the Eastern Ridge when I passed through an area that wasn't marked on the updated map. The trees here were older, massive, and tightly clustered. Moss covered everything like skin. I'd hiked this park for years, but this section didn't feel familiar. Almost like the landscape had shifted when no one was looking. I was about to turn back when I saw it. A thin trail of flattened ferns and broken twigs leading downslope. It wasn't part of any hiking path. I followed it, cautious but alert, one hand on my radio, the other brushing branches aside. After maybe 15 minutes of weaving between trunks and ducking under massive redwood arches, I came into a small clearing. There it was again. Another fairy ring, bigger than the first, at least 12 feet wide. Mushrooms of varying species interlocked like puzzle pieces, unnaturally uniform, and in the middle, God help me, was Colton. He was lying flat on his back, eyes closed, arms at his sides. His skin looked pale, too pale for someone who had supposedly been exposed to the elements for 4 days. But there was no sign of decay. He wasn't decomposing. He was preserved, and his head, no blood, no trauma, no insects, but the top of his skull had been peeled open like the rabbit's. Clean, precise, dry, as if someone or something had taken what it needed and left the rest behind. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. My hands shook as I reached for my radio. "Base, this is Ren. I need immediate assistance. Eastern Ridge." I found him. Senior Ranger Harold Beckett was the first to arrive, along with Deputy Merton and the county coroner, a skinny woman named Langley who smoked like a chimney and didn't speak unless spoken to. They took one look at Colton and went dead quiet. Langley stepped into the ring. I noticed she paused for just a second before crossing the boundary, like her instincts were screaming at her not to enter. But she went in, snapped a few photos, then crouched down and examined the body. "Head's been surgically opened," she murmured. "There's no clotting, no bleeding. This isn't consistent with any wildlife attack." "Exactly," I said. Beckett exhaled slowly. "Doesn't matter." "What do you mean?" He looked me in the eyes. "This is a bear attack. That's the report." I laughed, thinking he was kidding. He wasn't. Harold, come on, look at him. Bears don't do this. Bears don't make surgical incisions or leave mushroom circles." He stepped forward, speaking low. "You think I don't know that? You think this is the first time something like this has happened out here? That shut me up." Beckett rubbed his forehead. "We've lost hikers in these woods before. Miles. Quietly, without headlines. No one wants to believe there's something in our forests we can't explain. And the higher ups, they want order, not questions." "But this was a child," I whispered. He nodded. "And if the public hears we don't know what did this or worse, that it might still be out here, how long do you think it'll take before the entire park is under lockdown? They'll send in military, they'll clear the forest, and whatever's behind this, if it even is a thing, will bury itself deeper." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so we cleaned the site. I watched Langley bag the body. The mushrooms were left untouched. Beckett claimed they were naturally occurring, no samples, no evidence, and the report, unfortunate mauling incident, presumed black bear, no foul play. That night, I sat on my porch with a bottle of whiskey and tried to convince myself I wasn't insane. I replayed Beckett's words over and over. This isn't the first time. How many others had there been? How many reports were sanitized like this? And what had he meant by whatever's behind this? The news broke the next day. Tragedy in the Redwoods, child lost to bear attack. Photos of Colton's smiling face filled every local newsfeed. Darna and her husband were interviewed. Their words were stiff, flat, like someone had spoon-fed them what to say. The weird part, no GoFundMe, no funeral announcements, no outpouring from the community. It was like people forgot too quickly, almost like they wanted to. Later that week, I tried pulling up Colton's case file from the park database. No match found. I tried searching the Rayner family in the DMV registry. The address they'd given us doesn't exist. No property tax records, no medical files. Even the photos from their driver's licenses were gone. Colton Rayner, 8 years old, never existed, and I was the only one who seemed to remember him. I drove out to the Rayner address the next morning, even though Beckett had warned me to let it go. The GPS took me to an empty stretch of rural road 2 counties over, somewhere between Oric and Klamath. No houses, no mailbox, just a gravel pull-off littered with beer cans and shotgun shells, like the kind of place teenagers drove to in the dark for dares and drinks. I double-checked the location 3 times. It matched the address on their visitor entry form, and yet nothing. It was like the house had vanished, or had never been there to begin with. I sat there for a while in my truck, watching the trees sway in the wind, only they weren't swaying quite right. The wind was coming from the east, but the treetops bent north, just slightly, just enough to notice. Then they straightened up, like they knew I was watching. I drove back without turning the radio on. That night, I couldn't shake the dream. I was standing in the middle of the mushroom circle, but the trees were closer, too close. The redwoods leaned in around me like towering sentinels, and there was something giggling, not a child, not quite. A rhythm, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, soft, breathless, wrong. When I turned to run, the trees closed in. They didn't move quickly, They just stepped. That's the only word I can use for it. One slow, deliberate shift, roots lifting, falling, bark groaning, not cracking like timber, stretching like muscles under flesh. And right before I woke up, I saw something inside the bark of the largest tree. A face, pale, human-shaped, but blurred like it was pressed behind glass, just under the surface, watching me. The next day, I told Beckett I needed time off. He just looked at me and nodded, almost like he'd expected it. A week, he said. No badge, no patrols. Go fish or sleep. Instead, I went back out into the woods. I wanted to prove I wasn't losing it, that Colton had been real, that the rabbit had been real, that I wasn't another ranger cracking under the pressure. So I hiked the northern ridge alone. I told no one. I left my phone at home. I took my compass and an old trail map from my early days before they redrew the boundaries after the 2017 fire. And wouldn't you know it, the old paths didn't line up anymore. Some of the landmarks had shifted. I'd mark a fork on the map, walk 10 minutes, and end up back where I started. Paths curved when they should have been straight. Streams ran backward. I hiked in circles until my legs cramped. Then, just before sunset, I heard it again. Giggling, not loud, not distant. Close, nearby. I crouched behind a log and held my breath. It sounded like children playing, laughing in bursts and gasps, like they were running in circles. But I couldn't see anyone. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The sound was moving not randomly, but in a perfect circle around me. I was standing in the middle of another ring. Only this time, the mushrooms weren't visible. It was just ferns and moss. But the laughter followed a loop around me, like something was playing hide and seek at the edge of my vision. I whispered, "Colton." The laughter stopped. Dead silence. Then a whisper behind me, right behind my ear. "Do you want to play?" I turned around so fast I nearly fell. No one was there, but the fern bed in front of me had been pressed down. A perfect ring, still fresh. I ran. I made it home, well past dark. Heart hammering, calves burning, lungs raw. I locked the door and didn't sleep, just stared out the window with the porch light off. At 2, Gretium, I heard something brush the side of the cabin. Not claws, not paws. Fingers, fingernails raking slowly across the wood. I didn't go outside. The next morning, I caved. I made an appointment with a local psychologist, Dr. Andramulen. She was calm, professional. She listened, took notes, never once laughed or scoffed. Then she asked me, "Do you feel like the forest is watching you?" I froze. "How did you know to ask that?" I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're not the first ranger I've treated." Miles. That hit me like a truck. I asked her if she remembered the Rayner family. She said no, didn't recognize the name, hadn't seen them in town, didn't remember the news report. She offered to prescribe me something mild, help me sleep. I declined. That weekend, I returned to the original spot where I found the rabbit. There was nothing there, as expected, but something had been carved into the base of the old redwood. A shape, crude and shallow, 3 interlocking loops in a circle like a child's version of the triquetra, but messier, sloppy. Below it, words. They never stopped playing. I took out my knife and scratched through the bark, trying to erase it. It didn't work. The tree bled sap that smelled sweet and sour, like decaying flowers. I left fast. I got a call later that day. A college group had reported strange noises during their overnight campout near Damnation Creek Trail. The student leader claimed they heard laughing in the woods and someone breathing just outside their tents, but no one had been there. I took the call when I arrived. The kids looked pale. One of them, a girl with dyed green hair and a septum ring, pulled me aside. "I know this sounds crazy," she said, "but we heard a kid laughing." "What did it sound like?" I asked. She hesitated. "Happy, but broken." like it wasn't really happy, just pretending. She handed me her phone. She'd recorded it. I listened to the clip once. I couldn't breathe afterward because it wasn't just laughing. Underneath it, faintly, was the same whisper I'd heard in the woods. Do you want to play? I listened to that audio file from the college group over and over. The laughter looped unevenly, like a skipping record, too perfect in its rhythm, but with something wrong beneath the chair. A pause here, a gas there. The longer I listened, the more it felt like whatever made that sound was copying what it thought laughter sounded like. Not feeling it, just imitating it. The whisper was the worst part. Do you want to play? Same tone, same cadence as the one I had heard in the woods, right behind my ear. It was real. It wasn't in my head. I forwarded the file to Beckett. He never replied. The next morning, I got a call from a dispatch. Beckett wanted me to join a sweep team near Elk Meadow Trail. Said there had been another possible sighting. Hakers reporting a child walking in circles alone just before sundown. By the time rangers arrived, no one was there. I grabbed my gear, double-checked my radio, and headed out. The team was already on site by the time I arrived. 2 rangers I didn't know. New hires from Humboldt were taking statements from a middle-aged couple who looked shaken. We didn't imagine it, the woman kept saying. He had on red pajamas, little dinosaurs on them. His eyes, they were open, but he didn't blink. The man nodded. We called out to him, but he didn't respond. He just kept walking in a circle. Could have been a local kid, one of the rookies suggested, scribbling in his notebook. The couple shook their heads simultaneously. There was something off about him, the man said. He didn't even look at us. It was like he didn't know we were there. I asked to check the surrounding woods alone. I didn't want to explain myself to the rookies. I needed to see it firsthand. 50 yards off trail, I found it, another mushroom ring. This one even larger, maybe 15 feet across. A perfect circle. The mushrooms thicker, denser, more vibrant than the others. Some glowed faintly under the shade. Pale yellow-green caps like bioluminescent flesh. At the center lay a small form, child-size. My breath caught. The pajamas were torn, faded red with little dinosaurs on them. I approached slowly. My boots stopped at the ring's edge. I don't know why, but I couldn't step into it. My legs locked. I crouched, took out my phone, began snapping photos. The body was fresh, pale, still, arms out at his side, and the skull once again surgically opened, not torn or cracked. Opened like a jar lid removed without force. There was no blood, just emptiness. I called it in. Beckett arrived 20 minutes later. This time, he looked older, gray around the eyes. He didn't step into the ring either. He just looked at me. How many? I asked. He didn't answer. I pointed to the body. This makes 3. He nodded slowly. More than that. I stood there for a second, stunned. Why haven't we shut down the park? I asked. Why the hell are we still letting people camp out here? He knelt beside the ring but didn't cross the boundary. Instead, he reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. He handed it to me. It was a little girl, maybe 5, wearing overalls, sitting in a red wagon. My daughter, he said. She disappeared here in '98. I looked at him, stunned. I searched these woods for a month. He continued, voice distant. Never found her. Never found any sign, but I heard her laugh. Just once. Same rhythm, same circle. I swallowed, and you stayed on the job. I thought if I stayed, maybe I'd find her again. We both stared at the ring. I used to believe this place was alive in the poetic sense. He said, now I think I was right, but not in the way I wanted. Later that night, I went through old ranger logs. Every time someone vanished under strange circumstances, there were 2 things in common. Unusual silence, mushrooms. The records didn't always say ring. Some said cluster or strange patch. Others just said odd fungi formation, but they were there, every time, and always dismissed. Bear attack, hypothermia, lost and presumed drowned, suicide. Different explanations for the same pattern. The following week, the forest shifted again. That's the only word for it, shifted. I had hiked out to the far ridge trail just past Ladybird Grove, checking a downed tree blocking the southern loop. I had the chainsaw with me, radioed in, marked the coordinates. Everything was normal until I turned around to head back. The trail was gone. I don't mean obscured or overgrown. I mean gone. The landscape behind me had changed. What had been an open path 5 minutes ago was now dense brush, thick with fern and low-hanging redwood limbs. My boot prints in the dirt ended in mid-stride. No wind, no sound, no animals. And then, laughter, that same childish rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This time, closer. I turned in a slow circle. Nothing, just trees. Then something shifted behind the bark of a redwood 20 feet away. I swear to you, the trunk breathed, not visibly, not like a balloon expanding, but like the air around it pulled in and exhaled with slow pressure. The edges of the bark quivered, just a little, and something whispered from deep inside, "Do you want to play?" I ran. No shame, no hesitation, just pure animal flight. It took me an hour to find my way back to the service road. When I got there, my GPS still said I was half a mile off. I was covered in dirt, shaking, drenched in sweat. When I got home, I found something waiting on my porch. A mushroom. Perfect. Clean. Sitting dead center on the welcome mat. Just one. I didn't touch the mushroom. I stood in the doorway for maybe 10 minutes. Backpack still slung over my shoulder, staring down at that single, pristine cape. It hadn't been there when I left that morning, and it hadn't blown in. There was no wind, no sign of scattering leaves or fallen needles from the surrounding pines. It had been placed, deliberately, centered. I grabbed a pair of barbecue tongs from the kitchen and dropped it into a glass jar, sealed the lid, placed it in the freezer. I didn't know what else to do. I called Beckett. He didn't answer. I texted. They were at my house. We need to talk. No reply. Next day, I visited the station. Beckett wasn't there. Neither was the incident report from the Elk Meadow ring. I checked the logs. No mention of my call. No entry of the body. Not even a note about the couple who saw the boy in red pajamas. Just a general entry. Patrol uneventful. No activity reported. I asked dispatch if they remembered routing me there. Sorry. Ren. They said, you sure you weren't out on vacation that day? Vacation. I stared at the dry erase schedule behind the front desk. My name had been crossed out for the entire week. I drove home in a daze. When I got inside, I checked the freezer. The jar was still there, still sealed. The mushroom inside looked like it had just been picked fresh. White flecked cap, no signs of frostbite or browning. I sat at the table and stared at it for over an hour. That's when I remembered the mail. I had sent myself a handwritten report about the first rabbit ring, just in case. I dug through the kitchen drawer and found the envelope, still sealed. I opened it. The pages were blank. No ink, no impression, no writing at all. My handwriting gone, as if it had never existed. That night, I dreamed about Colton. He was sitting at the base of a tree, knees hugged to his chest, whisper in a tongue I couldn't make out. His head was intact. His eyes were open, but they were wrong. Too large, too still. I called his name. He didn't respond, just kept humming that strange little tune over and over, like he didn't even know I was there. Behind him, the bark of the redwood split open, not like a wound, but like a mouth yawning silently, and something pulled him backward into the trunk. Not violently, gently, as if it was bringing him home. When I woke up, my phone was ringing. Unknown number. I answered. There was static. Then, we haven't forgotten you. Miles. My blood ran cold. Who is this? A pause. Then the faint sound of giggling. Rhythmic? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I hung up. I spent the next day trying to piece together old maps, ranger reports, and folklore. Anything that might tell me what was happening in these woods. That's when I found a name. The Laughing Circle. An old myth from the Yurok tribe passed down quietly, rarely written. According to scattered references, there were places in the forest where the children's spirits gather in circles of play, repeating joy until it becomes sorrow. One line stuck with me. Beware the ring that does not grow. What is rooted in joy becomes hunger beneath. I couldn't find anything else. The article disappeared from the archive an hour later. A 404 error replaced the page. That evening, I heard a knock on my door. 3 knocks. Even slow. I didn't move. Another knock. Then, Miles. It's Beckett. I checked the peephole. It was him. But something looked off. He was soaking wet. His ranger uniform clung to his skin like he had walked out of a river. His boots left wet prints on the porch. But his eyes were dry. Unblinking. I didn't open the door. You have to come with me, he said, voice muffled. There's something you need to see. I stepped back. Where have you been? I asked. It paused. You're not safe here. I backed away slowly. Then he said something that turned my stomach to ice. Colton misses you. I didn't respond. He stood there for a few more seconds, then turned and walked off into the woods behind the cabin. I watched from the window. No flashlight, no radio, just the shape of him disappearing into the tree line. The next morning, I checked the porch. No footprints, no water, no evidence he'd been there. I called the station again. Hey, this is Ranger Wren. Is Beckett in today? The voice on the other end paused. I'm sorry, sir. Who? Harold Beckett. Senior Ranger. Another pause. I'm afraid we don't have anyone by that name. My throat tightened. I worked with him yesterday. More silence. Sir, are you feeling okay? I hung up. I drove to Beckett's trailer outside town. It was empty. Furniture covered in sheets. Dust 2 inches thick. Windows sealed. No footprints. No ranger hat on the hook. I broke in through the back door. Inside, I found only one thing that wasn't covered in dust. A photo. It sat face down on the kitchen counter. I picked it up. It was a picture of Beckett and a little girl in a red wagon. The same one he had shown me in the woods. Only his name written on the back wasn't Harold Beckett. It was Thomas Greaves. And the photo was dated 1972. I stood in that dusty kitchen, the photo trembling in my hands, and tried to understand what I was looking at. Thomas Greaves, not Harold Beckett. But it was the same man, same leathery face, same half smile, same ranger uniform, only younger, maybe early 30s, holding the same girl in the same red wagon. But this was 1972, and the man who had stood on my porch last night, dripping wet and unblinking, he looked exactly the same, not a day older. I put the photo back down and stepped outside. The woods behind his trailer were quiet, no birds. No wind, just that growing, gnawing stillness that I'd come to recognize like a scent. I drove home and sat in silence for hours, trying to make sense of it all. Could Beckett or Greaves still be alive? Maybe he changed his name after his daughter disappeared. Maybe the grief drove him underground. But that didn't explain his face, or why he hadn't aged in 50 years. I pulled up the old Ranger archives. Nothing under Beckett. Nothing under Greaves either. It was like the forest was editing reality itself, erasing people when they got too close. I started wondering, what happens if I'm next? Would my name vanish from the ranger logs? Would my photos disappear? Would anyone remember me? I got up and looked around my cabin, opened drawers, checked cabinets. Something small but horrifying dawned on me. All the photos I had family, friends, old colleagues, they were still there. But in every single one, I was missing. There'd be a space where I should have been, an arm around thin air, a shadow with no body, a party with no host, like I'd been erased from my own memories. The next day, I hiked deep into the forest. I had no plan, no route. I just went where the trees leaned, where the branches seemed to part just enough to beckon me in. It was like they were guiding me. Hours passed. I didn't eat, didn't drink. Then I saw it. The biggest ring yet, 20 feet across, mushrooms thick as a carpet, deep red caps and white stalks, pulsing slightly in the windless air. At the center stood a tree unlike any other I'd seen. It was massive, wider than a truck, bark blackened, like it had been scorched but still lived. It throbbed gently, like it had a pulse, and carved into it, deep and crooked, was the same symbol I'd seen before. 3 interlocking loops. I took a step forward and instantly heard the giggling, but this time it wasn't from outside the ring. It was from inside the tree, and not one voice, dozens, high-pitched, rhythmic, childlike, repeating that same pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then a voice rose above for the rest, deeper, older. You finally came back. I ran. I don't remember how long. The trees blurred. The air thickened. The moss seemed to grip my boots. I tripped once, maybe twice, but kept going. I didn't stop until I hit the old fire road near the Southern Service cabin. I bent over, wheezing, hands on my knees. Then I noticed something strange. The road was clean, too clean. No fallen leaves, no pine needles, just packed dirt, like it had been freshly swept. Then I looked up and saw myself standing at the far end of the trail. At least, it looked like me. Same jacket, same boots, same hat with the faded Forest Service patch, but the face was wrong. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I backed away slowly. My radio crackled. Ren, you okay out there? I grabbed it like a lifeline. Yeah, I'm near South Ridge. Found something. I think I'm close to. I looked up. The other me was gone. Just trees now. I made it back to my cabin just after dusk. On my front porch sat 3 mushrooms this time. One larger, 2 small. They were arranged in a triangle. When I opened the door, I noticed a smell, sweet and earthy, almost like fresh cut grass and wildflowers. I followed it into the kitchen. On the table was a drawing, crayon on yellow paper. A child scribbled stick figures. One tall, one short. They were holding hands. Above them was a tree with a big, toothy smile. Below it, written in shaky handwriting, I'm not alone anymore. I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing down everything. The rings, the voices, the vanishing people. Beckett, no. Greaves, if no one else was going to tell the truth, I would. I backed up the file 6 times, printed hard copies, stuffed them into envelopes and addressed them to old friends out of state, people I hadn't spoken to in years. If I disappeared, I wanted someone to know this wasn't a dream. This wasn't just in my head. This place was alive, and it was watching. At 3, Princesa. No, I got a knock on the door. This time, I didn't answer. I just listened. 1 knock, 2 knocks, 3, then silence, then giggling. By morning, I still hadn't moved from the kitchen table. The envelope sat neatly by the door, sealed and ready to mail if I made it that far. The drawing lay beside my coffee mug. The childish figure staring up at me with empty black dots for eyes. My hands shook when I looked at it. I don't have kids. I never did. But the drawing, it felt familiar. Like something I should have kept on my fridge years ago. Like I'd forgotten something I'd once loved. At sunrise, I drove into town. The fog clung to the road like spilt smoke. My tires barely touched pavement. The air was too still, even for coastal weather. No birds, no rustle of waking wildlife. When I got to the post office, I handed the envelopes to the clerk, a guy I didn't recognize, new in town. I asked. He gave a slow blink. Been here years. He didn't smile, didn't even make eye contact, just stamped the letters mechanically. I left quickly. Outside, I saw a boy across the street, 8 years old, give or take, same age as Colton, wearing a red hoodie and standing in front of the park's welcome sign. completely still. He didn't look at traffic, didn't blink. Then I noticed he was barefoot, and the sidewalk beneath him was damp. I stepped toward him. "Hey, kid, you okay? Are your parents around?" No answer. I moved closer. Slowly, his head turned toward me. The eyes, they weren't right. Too wide, too dark, like they weren't made for daylight. And then, just as I reached the curb, he turned and walked straight into the woods behind the sign. No hesitation, no fear, vanished between the trees without a sound. I should have called someone, maybe even chased him, but something in me knew that wasn't a boy. It was wearing a boy. Later that day, I went back to the ranger station. I had to try again. I had to get someone else to admit that things weren't normal. To my surprise, someone new was sitting at Beckett Greaves' desk. Name tag said, Ranger Delaney. I'd never seen her before. She was young, red hair, calm voice, professional, too clean for this forest. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. "Where's Beckett?" I asked. She tilted her head. "I'm sorry, who?" "Senior Ranger Harold Beckett, or Thomas Greaves. The man who worked this desk for 15 years. The man who trained me." She blinked slowly, like she was parsing foreign words. "We've never had anyone by either name here." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo, the one from Beckett's cabin. Him and the girl in the wagon. She stared at it, expression unchanged. "I'm sorry." "Well, sir, I don't know who that is." "Are you feeling okay?" Something about the way she said it. It didn't feel like concern. It felt like a script. I stepped outside, heart pounding. My truck was parked where I'd left it, only it wasn't. The license plate was different. The color was off. The contents inside my map, my thermos, my forest radio, they were gone. It was my truck, but it wasn't. I left town without speaking to anyone else. Back at my cabin, I noticed the mushrooms had multiplied. They now lined the front steps, 12 of them. A new one for each day since I found Colton's body. A clock, maybe counting down. I stepped over them and went inside. The moment the door shut, my radio crackled. "Ren, you need to see this." It was Beckett's voice. I froze. South Marker Post, just past the fire break. Then silence. I told myself not to go. I made tea. I sat on the porch and watched the trees. But around 6 p.m., I found myself on the trail, flashlight in hand, hiking through the thickest fog I'd seen all year. It wasn't a decision. It was like the forest had already decided for me. I reached the South Marker Post as the last light bled from the sky. And there it was, a new ring. This one wasn't mushrooms. It was roots raw, gnarled roots pulled from the earth, arranged in a perfect circle. Their ends bled sap that steamed in the night air. In the center stood Beckett, or Greaves. He looked just as he had the night he knocked on my door, dripping wet, eyes dry, pale skin. "Miles," he said, "you've seen too much." I didn't answer. "There's a balance here," he continued. "Always has been. The forest keeps its secrets. We're just the caretakers. You lied to me," I said. He nodded. I did. "Because the truth ruins people. It's better to forget." "I won't forget," I told him. He smiled sad, almost human. "You will." He raised a hand and pointed to the tree line behind me. I turned and saw myself standing there, expressionless, still, like a reflection in rotten bark. I ran again, but not fast enough, because the forest had already changed behind me. The paths were gone. The compass spun, and somewhere above, in the high canopy, I heard laughter, endless, rhythmic. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Not playful anymore, but hungry. I don't know how long I ran. At some point, the trail underfoot turned to moss, then to roots, then to something that didn't even feel like ground anymore, spongy, soft, too warm. I was sweating through my uniform, lungs burning, ears filled with the sounds of blood and laughter and breathing that wasn't mine. I remember falling hard, not onto rocks, not onto dirt, onto something alive. It pulsed beneath me like a heartbeat, and when I opened my eyes, the forest had changed. I was in a grove I didn't recognize, a shallow basin in the earth, encircled by massive redwoods so tall they vanished into mist above. The trunks formed a ring, tighter than nature ever intended. The branches twisted together like interlocking fingers. The light filtering down was the wrong color, too amber, too gold, like candlelight underwater. At the center stood a stump, or at least what I thought was a stump, until I got closer. It wasn't wood, it was bone, polished smooth, hollowed in the middle like a basin, filled with something thick and red that shimmered without light. I backed away, and that's when I heard the whispers again. Not giggles this time, words, many voices, layered, childlike but wrong, speaking just under the edge of hearing. Come closer, it's better here. We remember you. You were ours before. My legs didn't respond. Something was pulling me forward. I closed my eyes and gritted my teeth. Forced one foot back, then another. Then I turned and ran. Not away, there was no away anymore. Just distance between moments, between truths I wasn't ready for. When I broke the tree line, the world seemed to shift again. Same park but slightly off. Landmarks in the wrong place. Trails that curved where they once were straight. My cabin was still standing, but the paint on the walls had faded. The welcome mat was gone. The porch light didn't work, and there were now 14 mushrooms on the steps, one for each day since I found Colton's body. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I blinked, I saw the bone stump, heard the forest breathing. I tried to play an old cassette tape I found in the storage box under my bed, music from my first patrol season. But when I hit play, it didn't play music. It played a recording of my own voice. They live beneath the roots, I said, though I never recorded that. They trade names for faces. They trade children for silence. I ripped the tape out and threw it into the fireplace. It screamed as it burned. The next day, I checked the mirror, and my reflection blinked before I did. I knew I needed help. Someone, anyone who wasn't from this place. Someone untouched. I drove an hour out of town to the home of my old academy friend, Jules Ansel. He left the Park Service years ago and now ran a hiking tour company out of Crescent City. When he opened the door, I nearly collapsed, but he caught me, let me in, sat me down, made tea, and then he asked, "Who are you?" I laughed. "It's me, Jules, Miles." He gave me this blank stare, like he recognized the shape of me but not the name. "Did we go through the academy together?" he asked gently. I nodded. "You broke your ankle rappelling the cliff face in Kings Canyon. I pulled you up. You told me you would name your first kid after me." He smiled politely. "I don't have any kids." "But you said." "I think you should leave," he said, softer now. And then he stood up and walked to the window. Outside, in his front yard, was a fairy ring. Perfect, pristine, pale red caps and moss. And in the center, a stick figure drawing, flapping gently in the breeze, pinned by a twig. I left without saying a word, because if it could reach Jules, it could reach anywhere. I started losing time after that. Hours would vanish. I had come to in a different part of the forest with no memory of how I got there. Sometimes with the dirt under my nails, moss in my socks, sometimes with a child's laugh still echoing in my ears. Once, I woke up standing in the middle of a gas station parking lot, holding a bouquet of mushrooms I didn't remember picking. Another time, I opened my eyes and I was kneeling by that bone stump again. But this time, it was filled with something else. Photographs. All of me, all missing my face. I don't know how much longer I can hold on to what's real. My name is Ranger Miles Wren. I was born in Lassen County. I have no children. I never had a daughter. My badge number is 1883 WRN. I live at 107 Weaver Trail. The front porch has 15 mushrooms now. Tomorrow it may be 16. I've started hearing them whisper when I'm awake. I've started hearing my own voice whisper back. They said I'd forget eventually, but I haven't. Not yet. Not completely. And if you're reading this, if you find this journal, what it was, don't listen to the laughter. Don't step into the ring, because once you do, you belong to them. I burned the mushrooms on my porch, soaked them in lighter fluid, lit a match, watched the flames snap up in a line like dry paper. They hissed. The smoke smelled sweet at first, sugar and wet bark, but underneath, there was something rotten, something that didn't belong in fire. I thought I heard a cry inside the smoke, like a small voice being smothered. They didn't scream again the next night, but they came back, all 17 of them, perfectly arranged. No ash, no scorch marks, like I had never touched them, like they had been waiting. I started locking my bedroom door. It felt like a dumb precaution, but at night I could hear floorboards creaking under soft, deliberate steps, not raccoons, not wind. I knew the difference. I'm a ranger. I know the sound of a house settling. This was movement. Once, around 2:00, I swore I saw something standing at the edge of the hallway. A silhouette child-sized, with long limbs, too thin. It leaned slightly, like it didn't understand how to stand like a person. It vanished when I blinked, but the smell of mushrooms filled the room. I decided to return to the stump grove. I had to understand what it wanted from me, why it was dragging me through time, through memory, through whatever this reality had become. I didn't bring a radio, didn't tell anyone. I left at dusk, followed the scent in the air, that sweet, decaying perfume that always led me back. And there it was. Same grove, same twisted trees, same impossible canopy. But the stump had changed. It was taller now, taller than me. The bones in its side looked more human, like ribs exposed by rot, and something sat slumped at the base. A man, old uniform, ragged, badge rusted. Half his face was covered in bark. His hands were fused with the roots that spread into the earth. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. His mouth moved, cracked lips, dry. I knelt down. "Who are you?" I whispered. He turned his head with a sickening creak of spine and smiled. "You don't remember me, do you?" My jaw locked, 'cause his voice, it was mine. Not similar, not like a twin, identical, older, worn. But me? I staggered back. "No," I said, "that's not possible." I thought so too. He rasped. I told myself I could escape, that if I burned the mushrooms, broke the rings, left notes, left warnings. His bark-covered hand twitched. "But you can't leave what you are part of." I shook my head. "This is a trick, some kind of hallucination. You're not real." "That's what I thought about him," he said, nodding toward the base of a nearby tree. There was something nailed to the trunk, an old ranger's cap, weathered, faded. "Greaves," I whispered. He nodded. "He tried to warn you too, but he warned me first." I stood frozen, thoughts a spinning. "You're saying this is a cycle?" "It's a root system," he said, eyes empty. "You don't leave the forest. You sink into it, slowly, memory first, then face, the name." He raised his head. "Have you checked your ID lately?" I fumbled in my pocket, pulled it out. The picture on the card was black, just a blank oval where my face should have been. My name, what's up with that was all it said. "You have to fight it," I said. "If you're me, then I still have time." He laughed softly. "You're already fading, Miles. You've been forgetting since the first ring, since the rabbit." "No," I whispered. But I could feel it now, like something behind my eyes was unraveling, a loosening, a soft drift. "It's not about death," he said. "They don't kill us. They keep us hollowed out. Echoes in the trees, watchers in the bark." He leaned close. "You ever notice how the trees lean toward you now?" I had. I ran through the twisted grove, through the trees that whispered and laughed, but the forest didn't let me go. Not really. I emerged from the trailhead just after dawn, stumbling, scratched, bleeding from a cut I didn't remember getting. My truck was gone. The parking lot was empty, and when I walked to the nearest visitor station to radio for help, no one knew who I was. "Are you a guest?" the park aide asked. "I'm Ranger Wren," I said. "Miles Wren, badge 1883 WN. She typed something into her computer, then frowned. "I'm sorry. There's no one listed under that name." I slammed my hand on the counter. "Check again." A pause. Then her expression softened, like she was reading a script she didn't understand. "Maybe you just need some rest." "Sir, the park can get to people sometime." I stumbled out into the daylight. Somewhere, a child was laughing. In perfect rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the redwoods swayed slightly toward me, their branches creaking in a wind I couldn't feel. They were waiting, and I was running out of time. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I knew what was waiting there. Mushrooms on the steps, laughter in the hallways, and maybe, finally, nothing of me left inside. I didn't know how much more I could lose before I wasn't me anymore. So I drove, or tried to. The rental car I picked up in town sputtered and died halfway up Ridgeview Pass, right where the trees get too thick and the road forgets it ever wanted to go anywhere. That's what it felt like the road itself had given up. I left the car, grabbed my gear, and walked. There was no plan now, just instinct. Just the pull of something in the trees that said, "This way. Miles, come this way. You're almost home." I passed a sign I didn't recognize. It was old wooden, hand-carved, moss creeping over the edges. "Reunion Grove, trail closed." I checked my map. It wasn't there. I checked the park's digital trail guide. No mention, but the trail was fresh, like something had recently made it. I followed it in silence. The trees leaned in, the light dimmed, and then I saw them faces in the bark. Not obvious at first, but when I stopped and looked, I could see the outlines. Eyes, mouths, pressed just under the surface, like something had been swallowed and fossilized in sap. They weren't screaming, they were watching. The path opened into a clearing unlike anything I had seen in the park. It was wide, ringed, with redwoods so tightly packed they formed a natural wall, and at the center stood a house. Old, shingled, 1 story, sagging porch. A rocking chair creaked even though there was no wind. I didn't recognize it, but I knew I'd been here before. Somehow, I stepped up onto the porch. The wood groaned underfoot. The chair stilled. I opened the door. Inside was warmth, a fireplace flickering, a small kitchen, a table set for 2, tea still steaming in the cups, and on the walls photos of me as a child, as a teenager, in uniform, with people I didn't know but felt like I should. There was one of me and a girl 6, maybe 7. She had curly hair and a gap in her teeth. She was holding a paper crown. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, Miles Amali, birthday 1994. Molly, that name hit me like a freight train. I'd forgotten it, forgotten her, but there it was, anchored in print, in image, in a past I hadn't known I lost. The door creaked behind me, and I turned. She was there, standing at the edge of the living room. Same hair, same smile, a little older, maybe 12 now, but I hadn't seen her in over 20 years. I hadn't even remembered she existed. "Miles," she said softly. Her voice cracked something in me. I stepped forward. "Molly." She nodded. "You left," she said. Tears filled my eyes. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. You forgot," she said. "They make you forget." She walked toward the fire. Her shadow didn't move right. It stretched sideways against the grain of the flame. "They keep the ones who wandered too far," she said. "They take your name first, then your face, then your people." I fell to my knees. "How are you here?" "I never left." Her eyes shone, but her voice was hollow. They made me part of the roots. A low hum filled the room. The walls vibrated. The fire grew colder. And then I heard the knocking again. 3 knocks. Then a pause. Then a soft, breathy voice. Come outside. Miles. The ring is ready. Molly looked at me. They'll take you too, unless you break it. Break what? The circle. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, rusted blade. A name is a root, she said. You have to cut it out before it burrows too deep. I took the blade. My hands trembled. And if I can't, then you'll stay here, she whispered. Like me? I stepped outside. The clearing was no longer empty. Figures stood around the edge. Children, dozens of them, eyes dark, smiles frozen, and behind them the trees moved. Not swaying, leaning, pressing inward, slow and deliberate. The ring had been formed. Red mushrooms lined the ground, glowing softly, humming in rhythm. At the center, a new stump awaited. I knew what it meant. I gripped the blade, looked at my palm, and slowly, shakily, carved my name into the flesh. Miles ran. Each letter burned. Each letter screamed, but I kept going. Because if I couldn't remember myself, if I couldn't anchor who I was, then the forest would decide for me. The laughter stopped. The wind returned. The trees groaned. And then, one by one, the children turned and vanished into the trees. Only Molly remained. She stood at the edge of the ring, smile soft now, real. You remember, she said. I do, I whispered. The blade dropped from my hand, and when I looked down, the mushrooms had wilted. The ring was broken. The next morning, the ring was gone. No mushrooms, no glowing edges, no children, just dirt, soft and bare, like the forest had exhaled and erased its footprints. But I didn't feel relief. I felt the kind of silence that comes after a scream, still and heavy, like something is waiting to return. Molly was gone too. The house where I'd found her had vanished without a trace. Just a ring of roots where the foundation had been. The photos were gone. The fireplace, the table, everything. Even the path I'd taken to get there had dissolved behind me. But I remembered her. I still had the scar in my palm. The one carved with my name. Red, raised, angry, cruel. Somehow, the act of carving it, of naming myself, had broken the spell. Or at least delayed it. I hiked to the nearest ranger outpost. Not the main station, too risky, but an old fire shelter up near Cradle Rock, where the signals still reached the outer towers. When I opened the door, I found the walls covered in carvings. Hundreds of names, some recent, some so faded they were nearly unreadable, all carved in jagged, desperate strokes. Morales, 1995. Elliot Ray, 2002. Greaves, 1973. M. Wren. That one stopped me cold, 'cause I hadn't carved it. It was already there, in my handwriting. The radio in the corner sparked to life. Static hissed for several seconds before a familiar voice bled through. Miles, you made it farther than most. It was Greaves, or what was left of him. Where are you? I asked, pressing the transmit button. A long pause. Beneath, like always, where the roots tangle, static again. You remember now? That's dangerous. I didn't answer. They'll come for you. Not through dreams anymore. You cut too deep. They'll want you back. Who are they? I asked. What are they? More static. Then the forgotten. I stayed in the shelter that night. Door locked, knife in hand. I didn't sleep. Around 2:00. Mitchell, I heard footsteps crunching outside, slow, deliberate, dragging through fallen needles, then soft humming. That tune, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I gripped my blade tighter. The doorknob rattled once, then stopped. When I looked out through the slit in the shutters, there was nothing there, but etched into the glass from the inside were the words, "Time is mulch." I hiked back to town the next day. I needed answers, desperately. I went to the public records office and asked for visitor logs, search and rescue reports, missing persons files. They handed me a stack, most of it redacted, but a few names stood out. Colton Rayner, Beckett Greaves, Molly Wren. She had existed. I found a photo in the 1994 school roster 2nd grade. There she was, holding a construction paper crown. Below the photo, someone had stamped the word deceased in thick black ink. Cause of death, lost in forest, body never recovered. I stared at the page for a long time. I hadn't lost her. I'd forgotten her, and that was what they fed on. That night, I went back to my cabin. I burned everything. Journals, ID cards, my uniform, my badge, the contents of my drawers, my maps, even the half-filled logbooks I'd kept for years. All of it turned to smoke and ash. I stood outside while it burned and whispered my name over and over like a prayer. Miles Wren. I was born in Lassen County. I had a sister named Molly. I am not part of the forest. I am not hollow. And when the fire went out, I buried the ashes, not to hide them, but to root myself in truth. In the weeks that followed, I returned to work like nothing had happened. The new rangers didn't ask questions. They didn't remember Beckett, or Colton, or the rabbit, or the rings, but I did. Every step I took in that forest was a step across bones. The trails never stopped shifting. The compasses never spun quite true. The laughter sometimes came at dusk, soft, rhythmic, pulsing from somewhere just behind the trees. But they didn't reach for me again. Not yet. I had carved myself back into the world. For now. Still, I leave a blade by my bed, and sometimes I wake to find a new mushroom on the windowsill. Just one. Perfect. Watching, waiting. A few days ago, I found something buried near the old fire shelter. I was clearing brush on the western ridge, trying to stay busy, when my boot caught on something hard in the soil. Thought it was just a stone, until I saw the edge of a rusted hinge. I dug around it, scraping away layers of dirt and moss. It was an old metal lockbox, military style, heavy inside, a journal wrapped in oiled cloth, brittle with age, a compass with its needle spinning like it had vertigo, and a folded map hand-drawn, yellowed, the ink smeared but legible. The cover of the journal read, with Tola, NPS survey, 1960. Another ranger, another name no one remembers. I read the journal that night. It wasn't just a log, it was a warning. Tola had been tasked with mapping the more unmarked sectors of Redwood in the early 60s, just before it became a national park. Back then, only a few forest plots were federally protected. The rest was still under negotiation. Tola and his assistant, Gregory, were sent in to document root health and timber density. They never came back, at least, not officially. The journal told a different story. Pages filled with sketches of trees with human features, maps marked with red X's labeled Circle 1, Circle 2, no entry. He talked about trees whispering at night, trails changing direction midday, and Mimic calls voices sounding like his partner, calling his name from different spots in the forest. And then, in the final pages, Gregory stepped into one of the rings. He just walked in, smiling. I heard him laugh like a kid. When I ran after him, he was gone, but the circle wasn't empty. Tola claimed he saw himself standing in the middle of the mushroom ring, mouth wide open, face slack like a puppet. He ran, hit the journal, buried the map, and wrote, "They are not trees, they are roots with memory, and they remember me." That hit too close. I compared Tola's map with mine. They didn't match. At least, not at first glance. But when I rotated it 180 degrees, everything aligned. The fire shelter, the ring sites, even the grove with the bone stump. It was mirrored, as if Tola hadn't been mapping the forest but the reflection of it. The version that appears when you're already being watched. I scanned the map into my laptop, backed it up 5 times. Then I checked the park registry. No record of William Toller. No employee file. No missing persons case. Not even a birth certificate in the state archives. The only trace of him was the journal, and my hands holding it. The next night, I had a dream or a memory. I'm not sure which. I was a child again, maybe 7. Molly and I were playing hide and seek among the redwoods. It was always our favorite game. Only this time, she wasn't laughing. She was crying. I found her curled in a patch of ferns, clutching her knees, whispering, "Don't follow the voice. Miles, it's not me." Then everything twisted. The ferns wrapped around her arms. The trees leaned closer, and she began to sink slowly into the earth. I tried to grab her, but my hands passed through her like smoke. I woke up screaming. I couldn't shake the feeling that the journal wasn't meant for just anyone. It had waited, buried, preserved for me, and maybe it wasn't the only one. The following morning, I visited the ranger archives. Deep in the basement was a filing cabinet labeled Unconfirmed Incidents. I had to unlock it myself. Inside were case folders so old the edges crumbled at my touch. Incident 3A79. Camper reports hearing son's voice calling from woods after the boy had already died in the fall. Incident 2B84. Rescue team finds hiker standing motionless in ring of mushrooms. Refuses to speak. Vanishes from hospital the next morning. Incident 7C9 due. Firewatch ranger claims redwoods bent to follow him through the valley. Medically retired. Institutionalized. Record sealed. Every folder ended the same way. Subject non-compliant. Transferred. Records incomplete. Not one incident was followed up. No resolutions. Just silence. Just erasure. I photocopied everything. Scanned. Printed. Mailed copies to off-grid friends. Prepper buddies. Anyone I thought might keep it safe. Because if I was losing myself, I needed anyone to remember this was real. That night, my laptop screen flickered. Then the files began to vanish, one by one. Even the backups. Then the screen turned black and showed a single message. "We remember you too, Miles. I don't sleep much anymore. I feel the trees leaning again. I hear the footsteps outside my window, even though no one is there. And I've stopped checking the number of mushrooms, because I already know what they're counting down to. The countdown reached 21. That's how many mushrooms were on my porch this morning, carefully arranged, equally spaced, facing my front door like tiny pale sentries. 21 days since I found Colton's body. 21 days since I stepped into that first ring and something started taking me apart. And today, I woke up without remembering my own middle name. I had to check my birth certificate. Miles Benjamin Wren. I stared at it for nearly a full minute, and even then it felt like I was reading about someone else. That's how it begins. I think like rot under the surface. You don't feel it until it's already eating through. At sunset, I made my way to the southern ridge, the place where the trees first began to move. Not sway, not creak, move, like they were listening, like they were stretching to hear their name. I brought the old journal from William Toller and that cursed mirrored map. I brought a flare gun, a hatchet, and the rusted knife Molly had handed me inside that vanishing house. And I brought a memory, the last one I hadn't written down yet, the one I was afraid to. I'd forgotten the day Molly disappeared, until yesterday. It came back while I was brushing my teeth. No warning, no trigger, just a flash, like someone tearing away the curtain behind my eyes. We were playing hide and seek in the backwoods behind our family's summer cabin. She ran deeper than usual, too deep. When I found her, she was standing in the center of a ring of mushrooms, smiling, eyes unfocused, humming to herself. I called her name. She turned, tilted her head, and then whispered something that didn't sound like her. "Do you want to play forever?" Then she took a step back, and the ground opened, not like a hole, more like the forest inhaled her. I ran to the spot, fell to my knees, but there was only dirt, no mushrooms, no sign. And somehow, over the years, I let it go. My parents told me she drowned in the river. That's what they believed. That's what I was made to believe. But it was a lie the forest needed. Because once you forget, it owns you. Back on the southern ridge, I found the landmark tree again, the one with the 3 interlocking rings etched into its bark. I sat beneath it and waited. No flashlight, no radio, no distractions. If they were coming for me, I wanted to see their faces. At midnight, the woods came alive. No wind, no animals, just the trees, leaning, one by one, first left, then right, then forward. Closer, the bark shifted, not cracked, not split, but warped like something was breathing beneath it. And then, through the mist, I saw them, children, dozens of them, walking silently between the trunks, smiling, hands limp at their sides. Molly was at the front, older now, 15, maybe 16. She looked at me with those same glassy eyes. Miles, she said. It's time. For what? I whispered. To come home. She stepped into a new ring, fresh mushrooms growing in real time, sprouting from soil like fast-forward rot. Behind her, the trees opened. I don't mean they bent, I mean they peeled, splitting down the center like wounds in reality. Inside was dark, endless, and I could hear them. You've remembered too much. You've stayed too long. Now we need your name to grow. The children began to chant. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Their shadows danced. Their faces stretched. Some of them were me. Different versions, older, younger, dying, smiling. I fell to my knees, gripped the knife, and did the only thing I could. I carved a new name into my arm. Not the one they were stealing. A name they couldn't use. Not yours. Over and over. Jagged letters. Blood thick in the moonlight. I screamed the words like a prayer. Not yours. Not yours. Not yours. And the ground shuddered. The ring cracked. The trees reeled backward. Molly shrieked not like a child, but like something that had worn her like a costume and now realized it was unraveling. The bark faces split. The roots shriveled. And the forest went quiet. I woke up just before dawn. Alone. Back on the southern ridge. No mushrooms, no children, no blood on my arm, but the scar was still there. And on the ground beside me, a single word etched into the dirt. Soon. I don't know what I broke. I don't know if I escaped or just delayed what's coming. But I know this. The forest remembers everything. And now, so do I. Something has changed. For the past 3 days, I haven't seen a single mushroom. Not on my porch. Not on the trail, not even in the deadfall, where fungi practically bloom overnight. But I'm not relieved, because the silence is worse. It's not the peaceful kind, not like a calm morning on the forest floor. It's vacant, like the trees are holding their breath, like they're deciding what to do with me. And the worst part, I haven't seen my reflection since I left the southern ridge. I've tried mirrors, windows, even my phone screen. Nothing. I stand there. I wave. But the image doesn't move, or it doesn't appear at all. And once, God help me, I caught something else in the reflection. Just for a second. A pale figure behind me. Too tall. Eyes like hollow knots in wood. A mouth that opened the wrong way. Then it blinked. And the glass cracked. I'm not afraid anymore. What I feel now is closer to resignation. I've seen too much. Remembered too deeply. And I know what they want. They want me to take someone's place, a voice, a shape, a name to fill the space left behind by others who resisted. That's the only way this works. To feed something that isn't quite death, but isn't life either. So I made a decision. I went back to Reunion Grove, the clearing where the house once stood. Only this time, it was different. The grove wasn't just a ring, it was a spiral. Trees had curved inward, forming a corridor of trunks, twisted like strands of muscle. The air smelled like sap and static. The dirt was soft, and the spiral path pulled me inward step by step like a heartbeat I couldn't resist. At the center was a chair, old, wooden, facing a stump, and on that stump sat a book, black leather, unmarked cover. I opened it. Inside were names, thousands of them, written in different handwritings, scrawled, carved, burned into the paper. Each name was crossed out except one. Mine, Miles Wren. Still clean, still waiting. I sat in the chair. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could end this. Maybe I thought I could replace myself, offer something hollow so I could walk away still whole. But as soon as I sat, the forest breathed in a soundless rush of wind and warmth, and the book closed on its own. The ground opened in front of me, not torn, not cracked, but peeled, like skin revealing something underneath. Roots writhed in the soil, interlocking, forming a face. Meanie, eyes open, staring, lips whispering. It was like watching my own reflection rot in real time. Then I heard them again, all of them. Children, rangers, lost campers. We all came here. We all sat in the chair. We all forgot until we couldn't anymore. I tried to stand, but the chair held me, its arms closed like jaws. The wood grew warm, then hot, then wet, slick with sap that smelled like blood. And then she appeared, Molly, not the child I remembered, not the teen from before. She was older now, a woman, my age, still smiling, still sad. I missed you, she said. My voice cracked. I'm sorry I forgot. You didn't forget, she whispered. You were made to. I reached for her, but she stepped back. They'll take you now, she said, unless you give them something truer. That's when I remembered the knife, still in my jacket, the one she gave me. With my free hand, I pulled it out, slid the blade along my forearm, and carved one final message into the flesh. I was here. I screamed it out loud, again and again. I was here. I was here. I was. And the forest screamed back. Trees cracked like ribs. Roots tore free from the earth. Faces in the bark howled. The spiral shook apart, and I felt the chair let go. I don't remember how I got out. Just that I woke up at the edge of the ranger station, covered in dirt and sap. Shivering, a trail map was folded in my jacket pocket. It wasn't one of ours. It was hand-drawn, old. The same mirrored version Tola left behind. But this one had something new written at the bottom. Exit marked. Use it soon. I've made up my mind. Tomorrow, I'm following the route. The mirrored trail. The only one they haven't erased. If it leads me out, I'll tell the world. If it doesn't, at least I'll die knowing I wasn't insane. That the laughter wasn't a dream. That the trees really do move at night. I left at first light. Didn't pack much, just a knife. A compass useless. The mirrored trail map. And Tola's journal tucked inside my coat. No radio. No phone. No backup. I knew if I brought anything that tied me back to the park, back to this identity, it would just make it harder to let go. The forest felt different that morning. Too still. Like it had reached the end of its breath and was waiting to see what I'd do next. Waiting to see if I'd take the path. The only path it hadn't swallowed yet. I followed the mirrored map's first mark, an old stump, hollowed and burned. I'd passed it 100 times before on patrol, but never realized it was upside down on every standard map, like someone had flipped the topography, like the forest had mirrored itself to hide the truth. The trail twisted in ways that felt wrong. Paths that should have gone east turned north. Landmarks I knew were suddenly reversed tree scars on the wrong side, moss growing against the sun. But I kept going, for hours. Each step pulled something from me, memories, doubts, voices in my head whispering names I couldn't place. I passed through a clearing where the trees had no leaves, just fingers thousands of dry, spindly branches reaching downward like claws. Another hour brought me to a stream where the water flowed uphill, carrying floating scraps of paper with names written on them. I saw mine float past, Miles Benjamin Wren, then it sank. I kept walking. Around dusk, I came to the final marker, a tree unlike any other. It wasn't massive like the redwoods. It was small, thin and growing upside down. Its roots reached into the sky like antlers. Its branches clawed into the earth. Beneath it was a flat stone, slick with dew, carved with a single word, remember. That's when I heard it again, the laughter. But it wasn't mocking now. It was mournful. Hundreds of voices calling out in that same rhythm. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I turned and the forest opened. No mushrooms, no stump. Just air folding in on itself. A seam, like the edge of a page trying to turn. I stepped through. I don't know how long I was inside. There was no light, no sound. Only the sense of falling through something soft and ancient. Like being wrapped in wet burlap and dragged through someone else's dream. Faces blinked in and out. Molly, Greaves, Toller, my own, all distorted, all flickering. At some point, I stopped breathing. Not because I couldn't, but because it wasn't necessary. The forest didn't want me dead. It wanted me hollow. A voice whispered, stay, be our echo, forget the world. Be a root, be a ring. But I held one thought, one word, remember. I screamed it over and over, and when I did, the faces cracked. The laughter split into static. The darkness tore like paper, and I fell through. I woke up in the middle of the highway, just outside the northern boundary of the park. No gear, no clothes, no blood, just a faint scar across my palm, and the word remember still etched into the skin of my forearm. They let me go. Or maybe I made it out before they could finish. That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, I've tried to go back, but the entrance is gone. The trail doesn't lead the same way anymore. Every map digital, printed, even Toller's doesn't match what I remember. It's like the forest closed the door behind me. I left the service, burned my ranger uniform, moved 2 states away. But every night, I still dream of the rings, of the voice in the tree bark whispering, do you want to play forever? And some mornings, I wake to find a single mushroom by my front door. No note, no trace, just there, waiting. So I'm writing this not as a warning, not anymore, because I don't think you can stop it. I'm writing this as evidence that I was here, that I remembered, that even if they take me again, I carve my name deep enough to bleed. If you ever hike Redwood National Park, if you ever find yourself alone at dusk, and you hear the laughter, don't follow it, no matter how familiar the voice sounds, no matter what it promises, because once you step into the ring, the forest stops watching and starts remembering you.